Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I am Barry Rowland, and in this episode, we'll be reviewing the latest version of the Ascher Racing button plate. This is the C26 version. This button plate is now using an aluminum housing instead of the previous carbon POM assembly. And now, it's sporting some very nice joysticks that offer 7 different inputs. I also opted for the dual clutch feature to see how they affected my standing starts in racing series that require it. So let's get to it. Let's take a closer look at this button plate now. First off, you'll notice it has a very nice carbon fiber plate on the front, and we'll see how thick that is once I take a peek inside. It has some nice button arrangements on the front over here. These buttons are the nice knitters, very positive clicks. They've got nice button shields around them. And we also have the two-way switches, which I had some extra button shields or covers or protectors that I put on there, and they still work good, so I just left them on. Very nice feeling switches. And he's got a really cool 7-way joystick switch rotary combination button going on here. It actually is a rotary, as you would look at it and go, oh yeah, okay, that's just a rotary. And it has very nice feel to it. The indentations are very strong and positive. I mean, when you turn this thing, I don't know if you can hear it, it really feels, it's almost like winding a watch or something. That's how good it feels. But it also is a 4-way hat switch, so, or joystick, whatever you want to call it. It'll go up, it'll go down, it'll go to the left, and it'll go to the right, or my right and your left. And then you can also push it down for a click. So that's 7 different inputs for one button here. And you've got 2 of them. So there's 14 inputs just between these 2. And I've already used this button plate, obviously. I like to take it out of the box and take it for a run right away. And this is really cool to have. I really wish there was maybe 2 more of them because there's so much you can do with them. And of course, the regular buttons serve their purpose, but when I saw these, I said, oh my gosh, I got to get these on my wheel and take just for a spin and see how they work. And I love, I mapped all kinds of things to this, so it's really cool to have these. Now, I know these are some kind of a proprietary button for him, and once we get a peek inside, maybe we can see more about what's going on there. But very nice. And the shields, again, nice anodized aluminum bits, and there's different depths of the shield. If you see here, you can actually see it in this shot. This button is sticking up higher than the button down here. That's because this shield is actually lower than the one over here. So if you actually, you can choose this when you order your button plate. You want high ones, you want low ones, or you want a combination of. I kind of wanted a combination of because usually my hands are flying around up on the top here sometimes when I'm grabbing the wheel and spinning it around. And this allows me to hit that and never ever be able to push that button unless I intentionally get my finger over it and press it. Down the bottom, not that important, so I didn't really care about the high ones, and I just went with the regular sized or the lower ones than these. I'm not sure if these are regular size or not, I just know they're lower. So that's just some of the decisions you have to make when you get one of these plates. And it's good to have choices. In fact, you can see down here I've got a whole row of different colored buttons and these cool little 2-way switch covers. Let's see if we get a look at that. And they come in, this is an orange, although if you see on the camera, my camera's got some pretty true color here. It's kind of a pale orange, but it is orange nonetheless. You can do orange, we've got white, you got green, blue, red, gray, yellow, and black. And that is great to have that many choices on what you can put on your 2-way switches. Because when you get to this point of getting button plates and you're ordering one, having a lot of choices is what you should have, number one, if you're paying this kind of money for these things. And it's just great to be able to mix and match your colors and have some extras. If you get bored at looking at these colors, then you can switch them around. And the same case with the buttons themselves. Of course, we've got reds, we got a gray, an orange, a white, a yellow, a black, a blue, and a dark green. So it's a darker green here. And there is one thing to be aware of. This darker green really is a little bit, well, actually a lot darker than the green switch coverage you would get. So you can see that's kind of a light green. But it's nice to have all these colors to be able to mix and match. And I just happen to have some extra button covers here are shields. And you can see how nice these are. These are just beautiful. Well done. Just really nice feeling. And we'll get to these magnets in a second, because you can order magnets to come with it in case you don't like the hard feel that I have on this one, because these are smaller magnets. Just like a lot of shifters these days, the guys are doing magnetic shifters. And we'll go ahead and flip this. Look at, you can see the size of that magnet right there compared to, I don't want to get these too close because they'll take off on me, to these. These are actually smaller. Oh, I did it anyway. All right, so if I can get these back off, it's going to try to pull the big one with it. That's why I didn't want it to grab it, but it grabbed it anyway. But anyway, these are smaller, so it'll be less force when I'm using the shifter. Very cool that you have choices. Now, also in your box, you get a couple of Ascher Racing stickers. Very nice. These are clear. When you peel them off, they're clear except for the lettering. All right, so let's get to the back of this case, or plate, and take a look at what's going on here. First off, obviously there's 4 levers instead of the normal 2 when we just have our shifters. We've got a dual clutch set up back here. Got one over here, one over here, and the one over here has a pot to control the bite area, or where you want the bite of the clutch to be when you just pop that one off. But we'll get to that in detail later on. It has very nice carbon fiber support plates that are bolted to the aluminum housing, so that he can mount both the shifters and the clutch paddles. Everything is carbon fiber here. Very well done, as usual. It's just so meticulously done. It's just nice to hold it in your hand and look at it and feel it. It's just really nice carbon fiber. And you know, at this level again, it should be this way. But make no mistake, if you get one of these, I don't see any way that you could be disappointed with what you have here. Everything is nice and thick. It's not that real thin stuff. It's substantial, so when you're pulling on it hard, it doesn't bend. It doesn't feel like anything is given here. The pot switch itself, very smooth, very high-end feel to it. Not that, some pots I've had before, you can actually turn them. You can even hear them scratching around inside when the discs are turning against the pickup that rides on the disc for the resistance. But this is very nice, and a very nice aluminum knurled knob here. Very grippy, so even if you're sweaty, you'll be able to adjust that, even though chances are you won't be able to do much adjustment once you get your original adjustment on it. Cable gable, I mean, this is almost a given that the higher end button plates and wheels will have cable gables now, or some type of that cable gable instead of just a USB plug-in in the back. Not that the USB plug-in doesn't work or there's anything wrong with it. It's just that this gives it just a little bit more of a refined look and makes it worthwhile to spend your money when you look at something like this. Very nicely done. Very nice stainless or chromed pieces here. Very, very nice feeling. And this USB cable, now I have some big USB cables that I really like, and I'm typically not a big fan of small, thin USB cables. But I have to say, I'm not sure the coating on this, but it's very, very slick and almost sticky at the same time, kind of like a silicone or something. It's a very good feeling cable in the hand. I really am impressed by this cable. Even though I like the look of a little bit bigger one, this feels great in hand, and I'm probably not going to replace this cable. I'll replace the end with the ends that I use on my rig for all my wheels, which is an aftermarket end that plugs in and screws on. It's just the ends that I like to use on my wheels. But this is a very nice feeling cable. It's very supple. It doesn't bind up anywhere. It's just the little details like that that make Ascher Racing products stand out from some of the others that I've seen. And we've got a little ground wire hook here that once we put our quick release on, we can put that on top of the bolt that's going to be holding our quick release. So a nice little ground there, but make sure you always put that on there. You don't want to not have it on there and have it flopping around. Right, so that's really not much else to look at. It's just as far as showing you guys what's on here. The wiring is impeccable. You can see how nice he's done the resistor here, or the pot. Very nice shrink tubing up here. And everything's routed with little zip ties, and it goes into a nice slot that's cut into this custom carbon fiber backing plate here. Again, just everything is just impeccable all over. And I like these little nuts these are using here for the shifters. Little acorn nuts, we used to call them. I'm not sure what they call them now, but I'm going to stick with the acorn nuts. But very nice indeed. Just completely everywhere you look here, everything's nice. You know, you got flathead screws and countersunk holes everywhere. Just really nicely done. And what I want to do next is what we always do, if we can, is take a peek inside of this wheel. And I know this is a custom creation that Martin spent a lot of time manufacturing and designing and getting it right just the way he wanted it to. And I'm very curious to see what's going on inside of here. So when we come back next, I'm going to have the cover off, but not really laying off. I don't think I'm going to have enough room with the wires. I don't want to stretch anything, in other words. I don't want to mess anything up and then have to go in and fix it. So I'm just going to kind of lift it up and let you guys take a peek inside, and we'll see what's going on in there. So we'll get to that next. All right, we have the cover loose, and I actually, when I opened this, I decided to go ahead and pull off these plugs that are on a header inside of here. And very easy to reinstall it, obviously, if it's just plugged and not soldered on. And this is just the regular USB wires, the red, white, green, and black that you'll always see when you try to splice into a USB cord. All right, with that aside, and it was very easy to get that off, and I'll show you this little header in here. First off, when you first open this button plate, I was amazed to see, instead of a bunch of wires being soldered on the switches and going over to a Bodner board or some kind of a USB Interforce button board, there's hardly any wires at all. The only wires are going out to the shifters and the clutches over here. The rest of it is direct soldered into this proprietary circuit board that Martin Ascher designed himself and has manufactured somewhere. Very, very cool, very neat. I really like this. And all the soldering, I was looking at it, very nice soldering job. Shiny solder, no clouded over bad connections that you see when if you do any soldering, you'll know what I'm talking about. Very shiny everywhere, very, very nicely done. I really like this. Now, all the buttons in here are knitters, and I'll show you. Let's get this orange one up here. You can see that pretty easily. It's an MP series knitter. The switch up here, and I'm trying to get an angle on a switch where you guys can read this. We'll go with the yellow one here. You might be able to see that one. If I can get some light to reflect on it. There we go. Yeah, that yellow one back there, that says knitter on it too. So we know we've got knitters throughout the actual button plate. And I wanted to show you these headers here. That's why I took that USB cord off. Get a little look at it here. It's actually labeled red, white, green, and black. So it's easy to put these plugs back on, even if I forgot the orientation, which one goes where. So very nicely labeled everywhere across this board. Down here we have the master clutch. Of course, it's upside down. That's why it's hard to read. That's master clutch. But if we turn it around, we can see the labels on here. Again, careful not to stretch anything too far. And you can see there's the button labels over here. We have slave clutch over here. Of course, the wire's connected over to the slave clutch. And we also have rotary potentiometer over here. Again, very nicely labeled everywhere. Nicely done. And if you can look in here, this is a BU. I really couldn't make out the whole number. And usually the last number is the designator what kind of board is in here. But anyway, it's a Bodner board, of course, top of the line. You wouldn't expect anything less from Ascher Racing. I'm going to turn this back over and look at these joysticks. Now, I love these joysticks, and I think you guys, if you saw the other segment, you know that I was going on about them, how great they feel and how they perform. But we'll see that when I'm actually driving it. But if you look at these things, that's how they're connected. They actually have their own little breakout board, if you will. You can see it right here. Now, this is a circuit that Martin had to design himself. And so he finally came up with a design that would make this 7-way joystick work like it's working now. He doesn't sell these joysticks just for that reason. There's resistors and diodes and things on here that are a special circuit that he developed to make that joystick work the way it does. So if he sold one to somebody, then obviously they'd have to you'd have to have this whole board, the ribbon cables, everything to make it work. So to get one, you have to actually buy it from Martin. So, which I didn't mind doing because they are very, very cool. But it's very nice what he's done here, very professional. I really like what I'm seeing here, if you can tell from the way I'm talking. This is, I love circuits and I know just about enough of this stuff to get myself in trouble, but it's great to see how someone can actually design this, print the boards out, and then we have the nice resistors in line, the diodes. It's just very, very cool. And we got this nice ribbon cable that actually is connecting the breakout board to the main circuit board. This is really high quality work, high quality design. A lot of thought and work went into this, no doubt. Right, so anything else we need to see in here? Well, there's really not much else to see. We know we got knitters all the way around. We've got this fabulous board here. We've got a little breakout board here for each one of these joysticks. And of course we've got the go-to Bodner BU series USB plate. And one thing I want to point out here, internally, when they CNC this aluminum plate out of one piece of billet, you can see they've left these high points in here. Of course, these risers are spacers or standoffs, and they're part of the original aluminum piece. So that's going to make them very, very stiff. And when you get everything bolted together with your quick release and your wheel on here, it's going to be one stiff feeling wheel and assembly. And I already know that because I've actually been using it, of course. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to put it back together, and then I'm going to mount it to my wheel. I'm going to put it on this OMP over here, Super Quadro, and that's what this C26L will fit. And of course, you know, we got the different C26 sizes that's available. And I'm going to go ahead and get this cover back on. Oh, by the way, this is a very nice 3mm carbon fiber plate on here. And I don't know if I don't think I showed this before, but this has very nice chamfering on this aluminum case. So it's a nice rounded edge on the back, and it's also on the front edge here all the way around. Very, very nicely done. 3mm carbon fiber, very stiff carbon fiber plate. And this fits in here very, very tightly. And it's kind of difficult to get this top off once it's in there. You have to really wiggle one side, then wiggle the other side using the button guards, and it finally came out. But you won't have to do this if you get a button plate, obviously. All you got to do is bolt it to your wheel and go have fun. Right, so we'll go ahead and get it assembled, and then we'll come back after that. All right, our wheel's all assembled and looking good. All the buttons feel good where they're supposed to be as far as when my hands are on the wheel. Again, now that it's mounted up and we have our quick release on the back, and of course we got our ground wire over here connected. Shifters feel great with these are again the heavier magnets, and I like them that way. I tried the smaller ones, but they just weren't the same feel that I liked. And of course that's personal preference. The clutch paddles work great, and when you're holding the wheel, it's kind of hard doing it like this because it feels a little weird. But if you're actually holding the steering wheel like you normally would, it's really not that crazy feeling to be able to pull these clutch pedals in with your pinkies. And that's what I use, the pinkies. And of course, once it's mounted on your motor of choice, it's going to be a lot easier to reach things because you're not trying to hold the wheel up at the same time. So what we'll do now is mount this up and drive it a little bit, and then we're going to get into more detail about how these clutch pedals work, how to set up the bite point, and that kind of thing. But first, we're just going to put it on there and drive it and test out these fabulous joysticks and see all the cool things that we can do with them with just two of these. I'll tell you, again, I've used these before, and I can tell you right now, I wish there was like another one somewhere because then we could have nothing but joysticks. And if you're a VR driver, this is really a great help to have this 7 things you can do with one switch in just 2 different switches. That's 14 moves, like I said before, without having to worry about too much, because under VR obviously we can't see exactly where everything is. Right, so we'll go ahead and get it set up and take it for a drive. Alright, we're sitting in the cockpit with the wheel mounted, and I'm going to use these joystick buttons and show you how I have them set up. I have them set up for left and right to go through different black boxes, and then my up and down motion will be selecting what's in the black box, and then I use the dial to change or increment whatever I've selected. And then I use a push button to get back to my relative screen. So it's very intuitive when you have one button that's doing all this. It lets you do things a lot quicker. You don't have to go from one dial or one rotary to the next rotary or one switch to a button and then another button. It's very, very cool. I knew these were going to be great as soon as I saw them. And that was the left one over there that I was actually, no, it wasn't the left one yet. I was still adjusting by dial on the right one. But I've got the left one for aspect ratio and for actually going up and down. And then I have the dial set up for brake bias. And then I have the top of the switch for my lap times. And then the other top of the switch is for going back to my relative. So once you have this one switch programmed that you want to, or both of them, it's so easy to navigate around. And of course you can use a dial and flip through the black boxes just as fast as I'm doing here. But then you can only use the dial or the rotary back and forth. Then you have to go to another one. Here, I'm going back and forth through them. I'm using the dial to actually increment. I'm going up and down to select what I want to increment within the black box. It's just very, very cool to have this set up. And it kind of spoils you a bit. So I'm worried that I might have to get me another one of these for another wheel. Or maybe, I just wondered, I'm going to have to contact Mark to see if there's a way to get another one of these put into a wheel pod. Anyway, let's go ahead and launch the car. I've got the clutches already set up with the bite point, and just to see if we can get a smooth takeoff with no smoke. Let's see what happens. Ah, there we go, nice and smooth. No smoke behind me, and that's what we like to see. And now, a side effect of having the clutch paddles on this button plate is that now it frees up my clutch. And I don't have a handbrake yet. I plan on getting one. Actually, I got a few of them I want to get to do reviews on, but I just don't have one in hand yet. So I'm using my clutch pedal as the handbrake. I just mapped it to the handbrake because I don't need it anymore because I have the clutches on the wheel now. So, and I wasn't even thinking about that when I was looking at the wheel and looking inside and getting a closer look and all that stuff. But once I set up, I said, well, I had a button set up for my handbrake, and I don't know if you guys, probably a lot of you guys have done that, mapped a button to your handbrake. But sometimes when you're turning the wheel, it's hard to reach over with your thumb and get that button when you need it for the handbrake. So the clutch pedal really works great as a handbrake. That's kind of a side effect. Anyway, so all the buttons work great. Again, you saw the rotaries and the joysticks, which are rotaries, and how they're working. And what we'll do next is, now that we're talking about the clutch a little bit, we're going to actually take a look at how the clutch, these paddles actually work, and then how I'm setting them up to get that bite. That first paddle gets released and you get the bite, initial bite, and then you ease off with the other one and get the smooth acceleration without smoking your tires or getting that jerky motion. So we'll get to that next. All right, let's go over how this double clutch mechanism is actually working here. And I am going to superimpose a Windows properties field or window here so we can actually see what's going on when we're moving these clutch paddles. Right now, with the clutch paddles the way they are, the slave clutch, which is over here without the potentiometer, moves the cursor. You can see it move that cross back and forth from left to right. And if I actually do the master over here that has a potentiometer on it, it does the same thing. And they're both moving the same distance. So really nothing's happening. So if I hold this clutch down now, the slave, and use the master or the bite point paddle and pop it loose, you can see that cross doesn't move. That's because the potentiometer is always all the way down to the lowest non-bite setting. So if you watch the screen, you'll see that that plus actually moves when I move this potentiometer. See how it moves? Moves over to the left. So what I'm doing there is setting the bite point on the clutch when I actually do this. And how you do that is you go ahead and pull the clutch in, put it in gear, and then you'll go ahead and floor your throttle. So you push the throttle all the way down like you would at a start, and then we'll very carefully turn the potentiometer till the car starts to move. We don't move too much, we don't just take off, but you want it to move. And that's going to be our bite point. So now, when I pull, now that that's set, if you watch the cross again, you'll see it's actually moving over to the right when I pull this in. So when I let go of it, there's no clutch at all right now. Rather, there's full clutch right now. And then you let go of it, you can see that it bite to the movement, and then we just let the other one go out, and the clutch just lets it out normally like we would if we were using your foot. So red light goes out, bam, and then follow it with that one. You can see how that does it. Bam, and then go. And this gives you a very consistent bite point Every time you let go of this, you know how much that car is going to be moving, and you know what to do with the other clutch paddle to regulate a nice smooth get off without smoking the tires or getting that jerking motion when you just dump the clutch. So this is very cool when used properly. And next what we'll do is we see how this is working and what we're trying to do. What I'm going to do is go ahead and mount this to the rig, and we're going to shoot some video, and we'll show the car superimposed moving and doing things when we actually set the bite point, and then we're going to do 3 or 4 actual starts and see how much smoke we get from the tires when we take off. So we'll go ahead and get it mounted and get to that next. Okay, wheel is mounted, and remember the idea here is to have both clutch paddles in. We pop the right one out for the bite point, the car starts moving, and then the left one we just let it out smoothly to get the final acceleration. Now here we're going to set up the bite point, and what I'm going to do is give it full throttle, obviously, put it in gear first. And give it full throttle, and then I'm going to turn the pot until that car moves. And you can see it move here once I get the engagement point I want. There it goes. All right, and that's enough. So now what I'll do is actually go in and do some practice, several practice launches, and see how much rubber I'm leaving, or if I'm doing smoke or anything like that. So let's see what it looks like. All right, there's a little bit of rubber there, not much, no tire smoke. There was no bucking of the car when it took off, so that was a pretty smooth takeoff, I think. And again, what I'll do is just keep doing this and get a feel for the bite point is easy. Once you set that, it's easy. Getting the feel for the left clutch pedal and how you're letting it out is what you have to learn to do. And it's really not that hard. If you've ever ridden a motorcycle, and there we go again, a little bit of black marks there, but no smoke again and no lurching. So if you've ever driven a motorcycle, then it's the same kind of thing. You let the clutch out when you're accelerating on the motorcycle. It's kind of intuitive that way, except of course you're using just your pinky to do it, or whatever finger you choose to do it, but the pinky seems to be the best one for me. Let's see what we get off on this one. There we go. Oh yeah, that was a good one. That was hardly any rubber marks at all. So again, the bite point's the same, and then all I'm really concentrating on here, focusing on, is getting smooth with that left clutch or the slave clutch paddle coming out. And once you've mastered that, your starts are going to be great. I've already used this in iRacing with rallycross and some heats, and I'm really good at my starts now. I usually catch everybody that's in front of me in my starts, even though they might pass me again later. But at least at the start, I'm getting a great start compared to what I used to get. And this is just a great tool to have. It's almost, I wouldn't say unfair advantage, but it feels like it's an advantage. All right, so I think we've seen, you guys get the idea here what we're trying to do, and I think we've seen all we need to see here. So we'll get to, actually, we'll just do the final thoughts next in the next segment. We'll see you there. Final thoughts on the Ascher Racing button plate. It's great to see vendors in our community that are trying to improve on an existing design of a product. Martin at Ascher Racing is always looking for ways to improve his products. And I can say he has really achieved this goal with the new C26 button plate. Instead of the old design where he used an industrial POM plastic sandwiched between 2 carbon plates, he now uses this one-piece CNC milled aluminum unit. This new button plate has really nice custom PCB inside that eliminates almost all the wiring on the older version of the button plate. And of course, Martin is still using these great feeling carbon shifters, which is a good thing. Some designs, well, they just stand the test of time. And I really like these new 7-position joysticks. Not having to move between buttons or rotaries to complete 7 different functions is a real time saver. And if you're using VR as your main video source, these joysticks become even more useful. The dual clutch setup, well, at first this was something I thought would be, just fun to play with when running an F1 car. But as it turns out, these paddles can give you a slight advantage when using in a car in any series where you're required to make a standing start. Now, once you get the proper bite point dialed in and become familiar with using the slave clutch over here to complete your getaways, you will want to use them anytime you can. And now, I kind of want them on all my wheels. You also get to configure your button plate with these cool colors for your buttons and toggle caps. But there's always a downside, and now we're going to get to it. Like most high-quality sim racing gear, this button plate is, well, it's a bit pricey. At 621 euros or $740, it's not something that everyone will want for their sim racing needs. You still have to buy a wheel to mount it on. And most of the name brand real racing wheels, you're going to be looking at about $1,000 for a total wheel build like you see here. So obviously, this is not for the budget-minded sim racer. But then again, what high-end gear is. But if you're in the market for a new button plate, with or without the clutches, you should have Ascher Racing at the top of your list of vendors to consider. I'm Barry Rowland, and thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel.